this is us. This is our brand. We're from XYZ country, and we're proud of that. Keep that stuff. Keep the cool. Keep the mystery that might exist on the brand side for that. But when you bring that down to more of a product level, you might consider getting Japanese models on the product level. Hey guys, I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about e-commerce and your brand. You're coming into the Japanese market, you've got a great product, you've done the market research, you know how that all fits together. Supply chain is under control, you've got logistics, and you've got permission to sell in the Japanese market. So you're in like a really great place. You're feeling good, you're entering the Japanese market. What we see a lot of times is we feel like a lot of brands start at that point. And it's a great starting point. Certainly, there is a good conversation to be had around working through the brand and the messaging and the aesthetic of the brand for a Japanese fit over time. That's a very interesting and great way to play things. But it is something you're going to need to get under control. If not before you start, then while you're working on things in the first few years. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about, as an e-commerce brand, from our experience working with other e-commerce brands and seeing what has worked and doesn't work, and having an understanding of the Japanese culture, what we think is going to work best for a lot of brands. So some basic consideration points for you and your company when you're coming into the market. It really comes down to building trust. This is similar to every market that you're going to be entering, but really in the Japanese market, it's the same. You need a mechanism to build trust. There's been a lot of research done by psychiatrists about culture, and even trying to label culture. Now, labeling culture and psychology is a very difficult thing to do, but some psychologists have found success coming up with a few mechanisms. And there's one guy named Hofstede, you may have heard of him. If you're doing any research about Japan, it comes up quite a bit. A lot of people are talking about Hofstede and his research in terms of culture. But he's developed a series of mechanisms for trying to understand culture. And the one that's really going to matter to you the most when you're bringing your brand in, related to trust, is something called uncertainty avoidance. Again, if you're in the process of researching, you've heard about risk aversion and how that's a big thing in Japan. Risk aversion and uncertainty avoidance are slightly different things. They're similar. But what we want to do is we want to focus on, so what's the balance to uncertainty avoidance? It's creating certainty. So when you're doing that as an incoming brand, you don't have the Made in Japan label with you. And believe me, Made in Japan is a really big thing in the Japanese market. So you need to figure out other ways to create certainty. Japanese people, they want to make confident decisions. And there's another piece of Hofstede's research that, let's say, compounds on the uncertainty avoidance, and it's a lack of indulgence in the Japanese market. So this is another metric by which Hofstede has evaluated cultures. You don't want to presume that a Japanese person is going to see your product and then spontaneously convert. You hear about brand points, touch points. It's a good idea to presume that it's going to take a few more touch points before you're going to be able to sell your product in the Japanese market. Another thing that's actually working in our favor, but also against us, is long-term orientation. This is another element. The brands that have established the trust and the loyalty of the Japanese consumer, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to maybe prize some of that loyalty away and take it on for ourselves. Now, taking it away is going to be hard to do. Developing it from scratch is going to require creating certainty. But once we've gotten that, we can hold it fairly strongly as long as we're attentive to the Japanese consumer and understanding of their needs. And we have a marketing and messaging plan in place to follow up with them. So I just wanted to start with that. When you're bringing your brand in, be aware of the cultural differences. It's not going to be as shotgun, trigger happy purchasing of an environment. You might have lower conversion rates initially. You just got to stick to it, have faith in the market research you've done, and push forward. So I'm going to give you a couple of action steps that you can do for your branding to potentially get you over some of these trust hurdles and build that loyalty and long-term success. So the first one is protecting the brand. What is brand? Brand is really just the soft image or reputation that people assign to your brand when they hear about it, right? So you want to understand kind of like what level you're coming in at in the Japanese market. Are you a discount brand? Are you a premium brand? Are you a luxury brand? Understand where you're coming in, and then make sure that you're being careful to protect that status in the eyes of the Japanese consumer. So for example, if you're coming in as a premium or a luxury brand, you don't want to, run around doing huge 70%, 80% discount campaigns, because you create this stigma a little bit that you're not really a luxury brand, but maybe a discount brand, or maybe there's, you're a capitalistic brand, or you're charging putting too much margin on your products. None of that stuff you really want. A lot of Japanese brands, they already have quality, they already have market fit. Again, this is one of those markets that you come into and you feel safe purchasing things. I remember when I'm originally from the States, but I remember going to the store and a lot of my purchase process was which one's not going to break on me. I don't have that anymore in the Japanese market. I have a general feeling of confidence that the products that the Japanese business and the Japanese market is providing me is going to do great for my needs. So you really want to come in on a pedestal of quality, and in order to communicate that and to sustain that and to promote your brand, you do want to be careful with things like discounts. So be aware of the things that might degrade the tier in which you really want to perform. Also, another thing is, the sensibilities of the Japanese people are a little bit different. So you want to be humble, you want to be gentle, you want to be direct, but you also want to be soft. This is a different way that the brands carry themselves. So that's a little bit of a conceptual point, but with the right consultant, they can help you kind of work that out to make sure that you're not, the foreigner jumping off the bus screaming at all these Japanese people when that's just not what they respond to, So overly bright, overly flashy. It's good to have a balance, who your original brand is, but also like the sensibilities and I guess you could call it a level of calm and gentleness and quietness, and you could even say conservativeness that exists in Japan. So talk with a consultant about how I would define that right balance for your brand so you don't come in, looking like an attention grabber or something like that. Second but consideration point is getting around the made in Japan brand. So I alluded to this a moment ago. Made in Japan is huge here. It's huge everywhere else. It's bigger in Japan. They are very aware and conscious of the fact that they do some of the best manufacturing and some of the best product development in the world. So when you come into the market, that's what you're up against. That's what we're up against as foreign brands. So it's good to think about how you can cross the bridge to made in Japan. So think about what about your brand you can do at a low level of energy that's going to help you say, hey, we are Japanese. We have this piece of us that's Japanese. A great example is, for example, getting a Japanese product designer to design a product for you, designed in Japan. It's a great start. Finding production in Japan, especially like apparel, for example, that's a really great. Japan's apparel market is very high-end. It's expensive, but if you can do a made in Japan product underneath your brand name, that's going to be great. Think about made in Japan and think about how you too can be in Japan as part of your brand strategy. And that's going to create a better affinity and proximity and level of integration in the market, which will ultimately lead to better marketing and sales opportunities for you. Another really strong point related to messaging, focus on sharing and being transparent. So this really goes for all markets, but in Japan, the marketing sphere, I'm going to say, is a little bit less competitive than some other markets, European market, American market. You might even say that it's a little bit less digital marketing savvy, and that creates a really interesting opportunity for us. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy to create sales and to garner traffic. There's still a lot of energy required, but the opportunity is that on a more traditional society and culture, there's opportunity to do things that are less traditional. Radical transparency, radical information share. So instead of, paywalling a bunch of stuff, put it out there. It might get you some media pickup, it might get you some PR. It's certainly probably going to help you with SEO and the sharing of content. So we recommend that most brands, if they have the information, if they have the content, in order to set your foot in the market a little bit faster, be transparent and put as much information out there as you can. Do what the competitors aren't doing, which in a more traditional market could actually be quite a lot of things. So do your research and find out where the holes exist, and then fill those holes, especially on a content share level. So the next point I'm going to talk about, the balance between your brand's international flavor and localization. So a really big question point for a lot of e-commerce brands coming in the market is, I've got these product images, lifestyle images, model shots, all of these things that could potentially be used for my product, but should I use a Japanese model? Should I use a non-Japanese model? There's no quick answer to this one. Of course, it depends is a real conversation here, but to give you a little bit more of an action step forward on what you could try to do, don't lose touch of the international flavor of your brand, because in the Japanese market, that can come across as having a different edge, a modernity to it, a sense of cool, a sense of style, especially you're from a country that Japanese people feel a real kinship for. The obvious one that always comes up is Germany. The cultures are fairly similar in a lot of ways. Made in USA has a good image in Japan. Nordic countries, they do have a sense of kind of style to them. There's a few countries that, if you're from those countries, keep that. Of course, keep that. You definitely want to piggyback off of that. And so in that sense, a lot of that aspirational type content that you have, cool factor stuff, you might want to keep that. You might want to say, this is us. This is our brand. We're from XYZ country, and we're proud of that. Keep that stuff. Keep the cool. Keep the mystery that might exist on the brand side for that. But when you bring that down to more of a product level, you might consider getting Japanese models on the product level. So try to think of your imagery and your media and your just general content and messaging strategy in two tiers. You've got your brand level, and then you've got your product level. So that could be an interesting place to split. Stay foreign, non-Japanese up on this top level. But when you're actually at the stage where you're trying to sell a specific product, you can use Japanese models basically at that level. This is kind of more of a CRO idea, a way for you to improve conversion basically. But another thing that you can do is try to showcase your product in a variety of different ways. I won't go too far into this, but focus on features and functions in one set of your photography. Focus on lifestyle in another set of your photography. Focus on, in the field use, like real situations. If you sell some sort of outdoor product, let's say a tent or something, show it, real camping experiences, these sorts of things. So that's a little bit more on the CRO, how to improve the conversion side, which I'm hoping to go into in another video in the future. But that's another really good thing for you to consider as part of the process of bringing your brand into the market for EC. Let's talk about your visual brand now. I was trying to think of a really good way to explain this, and I came up with a bit of an analogy, which I hope will translate. Japan is a little bit more of a muted, colorful. And what I mean by that is, when your brand comes into the market and you're thinking, how do I visually present this? How do I visually present my brand and my products and all of these things? Think about the primary colors, like as non-Japanese, even as Japanese when you're a little kid, royal blue, bright red, canary yellow, all of these colors are just vibrant, strong. In Japan, imagine those colors as pastel. So they're still undeniably colorful, but they're just a little bit more subtle, and they're a little bit more reserved. I think that's a good explanation of how you might want to consider treating your visual brand. Now, you can certainly come in very vibrant and colorful and have success in that way, but Japan in general is a soft pastel kind of country in terms of the aesthetic needs of people, and even attitudes and personality in a lot of ways. So that's a potential point of consideration for you, is how you want to come in. So what's interesting about the analogy is you don't need to you're not just muting down your colors, you're muting down and pastelling, let's call it pastelling down. It's a new phrase I just made up. You're pastelling down your messaging and your presentation. So you don't necessarily want to be loud and out in your face. I alluded to this a little bit earlier. You want to be confident, you want to be colorful, but you don't necessarily want to be loud. That can come across as a bit of overcompensation in maybe some ways. So just try not to be as intrusive, try not to be too attention-getting. Pastelling down your brand is a good way to do that. So just in closing, a lot of things to consider about bringing your brand in. We recommend that you try to address these things right when you're getting started. If you go too far and you go too long without addressing the brand, you might accidentally get subconsciously scripted as a certain type of brand, even though that's not really what you're going for. So one of the ways that we often consult with clients is we talk to them about the tier. You know, we talk about, are you a discount brand? Are you a standard level brand? Are you premium? Are you luxury? We generally work with brands in the premium to luxury space. Or if they're not there, perhaps they're in the standard level, don't really work too much with discount, but we're trying to elevate them, because we know that a lot of the brands in Japan are already at that level, and we really want to be there in order to compete. So consider your level and consider carefully how your brand, your presentation, your voice, your message, your media, how all of that keeps you in that zone so that it doesn't deteriorate over time and then become impossible to recover. So be delicate about that. Remember also, Japan's a different culture, but as generations go on, it changes. You know, culture almost by definition is completely paradoxical, and Japan is no exception to that. Even a lot of the things that I've said and recommended here will have completely opposite viewpoints, which I encourage you guys to comment and let me know what you think if you have experience in that area or other opinions of your own. But it is paradoxical. And also, individual bias, individual psychology is a very real thing. So just remember that it's not always a perfect answer. I've tried to make it, give you some blanket ideas here, but it might not be absolutely perfect. It might depend on, what your market is, what your product is. So definitely talk to someone who's got experience and can kind of talk you through the finesse of your specific situation. But yeah, I hope that's a good start for you in your e-commerce journey in Japan. I'm Nate, CEO of Humble Bunny. We're always here to help you hopefully make your brand a success in the Japanese market, as we have for a number of other brands. So good luck, continue being curious, continue being humble, and best of luck with your brand.